My name's Jennings. I'm an associate architect at JM Architects. Been using Reddit for 12 years, Dynamo for 3 on and off. Bit of background using Visual Basic, VBA and Excel, which kind of led me on to discovering Dynamo in a way. Beginner in Python. I've got a bit of Python going on in this script. I'm sure there'll be more later on this evening as well. From JM Architects, 27th in the AJ100. We've got 4 offices nationwide. I've been manager keep us here today from the Edinburgh office. In Manchester there's 38 staff. We do every kind of sector you can imagine, and 90% of our current projects are in Reddit, so there's a large dependency on Reddit and an increasing demand for the use of Dynamo in our workflow. So the problem we've discovered doing large multi-unit residential schemes, we end up with a COBie requirement at bin level 2, and the COBie plugin doesn't like using groups. It wants to ungroup any groups that you create so it can fill in the information. And I discovered that Dynamo doesn't want to do this. It'll treat groups or elements within groups equally. So on the right hand side of the screen there, you can see how the COBie plugin wants to break up the groups or just skip them. So I came up with a Dynamo script that doesn't want to break them apart. I can insert the COBie information into our apartment groups, and then we can get a full COBie output from Revit. So the script uses a mix of beginner, intermediate and advanced level solutions. And to be honest, this script was written 3 years ago, and I'm mainly showing it today. It's more about the process than the actual function of the script itself, because I'm hoping that everybody of whatever level you're at can take something away from the process that I've been through, take a bit of learning. So the process that we're going to go through is selecting the family types that we need to insert COBie data for, extracting and processing that data, so taking family name, the types, processing the strings, taking unit class information that I've set up in a spreadsheet, processing that in Dynamo, and publishing this data back into the model before we export our COBie data sheet. So, first bit for us is often actually the last part of the process. We'll normally write a script, come up with something that works, and then right at the end is go back and create a user input form to help anybody who's coming into Dynamo and doesn't know how to hack about with nodes, etc., to make it more user friendly. And this is done using the data shapes package, which is available through the package manager in Dynamo. They've got a really good website actually. It goes through all of the different nodes and how-to guide on each one of their nodes. But I'm going to run you through a couple of them now. So on the far right-hand side, you can see the multiple input form, and this has got multiple sections that we need to fill in. And then in the bit highlighted in orange, we've got our first drop-down data menu. And then on the far left, you can see that input form as it comes up on the screen. And it's choosing our classification system, and that's between Uniclass 2.0 or Uniclass 2015. And that's simply created by a node code block, which inputs the keys and the values. At this point, I've just kept them the same. You can have a different description in the key and the value that we want to push through into the Dynamo script. That is the kind of important bit in terms of the data. But at the minute, I've just kept these the same for ease. The other bit at the top there is your input name, which you can add on, which is just given this classification system. You can see that on the far left. So the second is our list node. So into that, I've done another code block, and that gives a list of all our categories just typed out. So all of those are strings, string values. And again, another string in there to give it an input name. And what you'll notice then, I've got a list create node to the right hand side of those two, which combines those into a list and feeds into the multiple input form. There's 2 separate sections that follow in sequentially on the form that you can see on the left. The other 3 bits at the top, they're a bit more of the niceties again, so a title, an image file that hasn't quite come out on the bottom left example there, and then finally the button to press when you're ready to click go You can add a separate title for that. So now that we've got our two inputs sorted, we've got one list of our categories that we want to create COBie data for, and we've got one which is the selection of our uniclass system, whether it's 2.0 or 2015. In my code block, I've broken them up so I can give them two different paths. You won't quite see the top right corner live here because it's taken out of our screen, but I'll run through this in a bit more detail in a second. But the top strand that we're going to focus on first is about the categories and how to start to deal with selecting parameters from those categories. So I created a custom node because what we're going to do is take the string value of the categories from our input form and convert them to an object type, which is very important in Dynamo, an object type of category itself. So on the start of most of the nodes where you've got an input, a good example there is the list dot flattening the centre of the screen there. It's requesting a list in. Now if you feed anything other than a list into that, it's not going to be happy. The same applies if you need to feed in the object type of categories. If you feed in a string value, it will fail. So I now need to convert those string values into a category, that object type, and pass that through using a filter which picks up the categories that we wanted or input into our COBie data input form. And in the bottom right corner, I've just used a random example of some categories, some which are false, some which are true. So in this example, I've used doors and floors that we want to add COBie data for. So on the start of the custom node on the left-hand side, I've basically created a list of all the categories using the categories node. It puts them all together. I'm going to come out of that actually just to show you on the larger screen. That then comes into, it splits off firstly into string from object. We're converting it back into a string again. It's only due to the ease of the process. But you can see the category as the object type goes straight to the top right to our filter by Boolean mask. So in order to then differentiate strings from the object category, object type, we've used a bit of Python that basically says in the selected input, in the two categories that I input into this script, which was doors and floors, does this relate to any of the categories that are coming on the list that we've just created using the category object type? If they don't, then put false. If they do, then put true, and output this right-hand list as a kind of Boolean list back into our script, compare one against the other using the filter by Boolean mask, and it will filter out the ones that are false and filter in the ones that are true, and that gives us our categories out in the object type of categories rather than string. Very complicated method in my opinion, and since I've done that, I worked out there was a much easier way of doing it, which was using category.byName, which would have saved me all that bother, but that's because you're always learning Dynamo and you'll always get frustrated when there's an easier way. But it was a nice introduction to Python anyway. And a good introduction to filter by Boolean mask, because that's one of the, I would say, most important filters when sorting data in Dynamo. So now we've got the categories that we need. What you haven't seen, because there's a blank on the previous screen, was it selects all object types of those categories. I've flattened the list, and then I want to filter out non-COBie types. So in the bottom left corner there, you can see our type parameters within Reddit, and there is a tick box button, which basically the COBie plugin uses, and if it's ticked, it will export that particular element for COBie data. If not, it won't. So there's only really a need to input COBie data into the model where we've got that checkbox selected. So it's just a quick filter using a get parameter value by name to find our COBie type parameter. If it's true or false, using 0 or 1 as ticked on or ticked off, and that filters through to a Boolean mask, which I just lost. There we go. So in the top right corner that you can't see if you're live here is another filter by Boolean mask, and that filters out any of the elements selected that have the COBie.type tick box selected, and therefore we want to utilise that for COBie data. So the next bit is to extract some of the parameters from the elements that we want to use for COBie, such as the family name and the category. We can then use the process data. The family name will be used in naming some of the types later down the line, and the one at the bottom there, the category, we're going to use to search for a unit class reference that we can put into our data as well. And these are both using the element.getParameterValue by name. So these are quite simple nodes, and you use them quite often when dealing with extracted parameter data in Reddit, in Dynamo. So now we're on to the second strand, which is getting our unit class information. So I set up a spreadsheet in the top left corner there. One of our contractors had a specific unit class code they wanted to use for different categories. So simple, row A is the category within Reddit, B is the unit class code for that particular category. And then running along the bottom of the screen there, we've selected unit class 2015, which is fed into our multiple input form. That's then fed through to the bottom right hand corner now, where I've got an import Excel node. So that requires a file path, which I've set as standard within Dynamo. I could have put it through the input form, but it was simply just keeping it because it's a static location. Next is the sheet name, which you can then relate back to our user input form, so whether it's 2015 or 2.0, and I've kept the sheet names in our Excel spreadsheet in the top left corner identically titled as the strings that are feeding into this, and then read as strings as true because you want it to be read as string rather than numerical data. That then takes the Excel information. It removes the item at the first index, which is the column headers. It transposes that list because the way that Excel wants to work, it works, so Dynamo extracts Excel data, it does it in rows rather than columns, and then it splits it off, which you can't quite see here, into column A, which is categories, and then column B, which is unit class codes. So hopefully this one should give a bit more of an explanation. So you can see I've simplified the code here, the Dynamo script. This is a kind of standalone version just for this presentation. And you can see on the example, it first feeds out the rows horizontally. So you'll see list 0, 1, 2, 3 in our first watch node is casework, then it's unit class code, and then it's our description. In the lower string, you can see I've removed the item at index, so that gets rid of what you can't see is the column headers, which is category, unit class code, and unit class description, so it gets rid of those headers, and then it transposes it into what you see on the far right hand side, which is list level 0, which is all our categories, and then the second list is our unit class codes, and then we break that up within this the script here. So on the top we've got the categories, second we've got the unit class codes. So from our earlier path earlier, we've got the string from object, which gives us our category that we're searching for. Then out from the previous slide, on the far left, we've got our categories coming in. And I'm using the list.map and list.index of combined as two nodes together, which I never really fully understood at first, because it doesn't seem logical in terms of how Dynamo works from left to right. You're feeding a function into list.map, and that function has to go to a node to the left-hand side, which basically is finding the index of the particular list for something that you input from the string of objects, and then that falls out. Yeah, so it's easily explained, or better explained in this one as an actual example. So you can see there in the code block I've got walls, floors and doors. So the list.map is saying, okay, what index of the list are walls, floors and doors in the list that we're inputting, and you can see the watch node there, and it's saying it's number 11, number 4 and number 3. And then that particular list of indices is then compared, or using the getItemIndex from our list of the similar size with the same size list, so it's finding them at the right index point and then outputting the value from the lower list, and that gives us our unit class codes. So now we've got all the information processed. We've got our family name, we've got our elements, we've got our category, we've got the unit class code. It's now time to process this data and put it back out to the model. Now, earlier we were using get parameter value by name node. Now I've started using a bit more design script, which can do it in a lot. It becomes more concise within your Dynamo script if you can get used to using design script. Because it means instead of having 10 nodes, you've just got 10 lines of text, you've got 10 lines of code, and it works really efficient if you're processing the same thing over and over again. So we've got I've set up a variable called getTypeMark, so it's finding the type mark, as you can see on the far right of that code line there. It's the type mark parameter from the elements that come in, so another variable called elements in, and you can see that in the top left corner of this particular node is the input line. Same with the getTypeName. The rows beneath that, we are creating a description that will get fed into the COBie data. So all I'm doing is concatenating some of the information that we've got already for the description and the name. And then finally, the bottom section is using the set parameter value by name, using the data that we've input already, but also the parameters or the data that we just processed there by concatenation or taking it from the get parameter value by name. And then those 5 bottom rows feed all of our information back into the Revit model, and then we're ready to export from COBie. So COBie's pretty boring in general, I'll admit, but hopefully there's something in that presentation you can all take as a hint, a tip, a trick. In Dynamo, going through a few processes, and hopefully that will help you in a few scripts of your own in the future. Any questions? And I've added on a little or suggestions there because, as I've discovered, there's easier ways of doing things. So if anybody has any easier ways of doing certain things.
Have you looked at all at dictionaries in Dynamo?
I haven't yet, no.
It'd be worth, I think, just all the stuff you've got there with your uni class and the way you're pulling the categories in. If you look at dictionaries, you'd probably find it'd be a lot easier to feed those values in. You could shorten that down quite a lot.
Cool.
As you say, obviously your script's kind of 3 years old, so
yeah,
you know, a lot of things have moved on, and that dictionary's really only came in version 2.
So the dictionary came in version 2.
As kind of coded within.
Okay, that's cool.
Within Dynamo, but definitely worth a look at dictionaries.
Cool. Dictionaries is now on my view list. Anybody else?
I would suggest look at list at levels.
List at levels.
For your set parameter, you'll only need one node.
Yeah.
And you can set 20, 100 parameters at once on one node.
Okay, yeah.
Have a look at that.
Cool. Good tip. So I don't know if the microphone will pick that up, but that was yeah. I'll pick it up on the camera there. That's cool. Okay. Thank you very much.